Good evening. Welcome to the February 8th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. With recent coronavirus case activity, and in keeping with best practices from the County Health Department and State Health Department, we do continue to ask those who are in village buildings, including this one, to wear a mask. As is our custom, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Jose,
Here.
Commissioner Wallace,
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Here.
Commissioner Colavani,
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Here.
Commissioner Glover.
Here. Fantastic, all present tonight. Is there a motion concerning minutes of previous council meetings?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the February 1, 2022 minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from council members? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Just like that, we're on to item 4. Sounds like this mic's a little louder. So you guys hear me okay? Good. Before we continue on to public comments portion, just a few guidelines. Some of you who have been here in recent weeks have heard these. For others, it may be new or at least a good reminder. We have struggled a little bit with this in the past. Please remember the public comments portion of these meetings, both on agenda items and on non-agenda items, is an opportunity for the public to address the council. While we try to be accommodating, it is not a question and answer session. We have a variety of opportunities to ask questions or engage council members. Our e-remarks page, the CRC system, coffee with the council when we have those in better COVID times, direct email, and as we've gotten in the last few days, direct phone calls as well. I'm certain everyone up here has spent time in person off this dais making themselves available too. But the public comments agenda item and the public comments portion of each specific agenda item are intentional parts of a structured meeting. As such, we do have some guidelines how we'd like them to be handled. First of all, please state your name for the record. Please keep comments to 5 minutes or less. Please avoid repeating what others have already said. And please keep your comments to one visit to the podium per subject. And please remember, this is an opportunity to be heard. It's not a debate. If you forgot to mention something or additional conversation brings up a new idea, please hold that until after the meeting. Use one of the other contact methods to contact us, or bring it to our next meeting and we'll discuss it further. So with that, are there any public comments tonight on subjects not on tonight's agenda?
I had a great 2 weeks. I got stranded in Downers Grove. Not a bad place to get stranded. I got, my car got stuck in the snow 5 times. Every time I got stuck in the snow, people jumped out of their vehicles, pushed me out, shoveled me out, whatever it took. I never seen that kind of response. And on that note, I did something recently. I rented an office in Downers Grove. And it's at 5312 Main. It's been closed down for, I guess, 3 to 5 years. It's an old chiropractor's office. And I'm the former CEO and president of Dad's Business, THAAATS Business. My clients used to be Fox 32, Chicago Sun-Times, Intuition Music, Comedy Central. I've been basically founder for probably 25 years in retirement. Ran out of money. So I came out of retirement. One of the reasons I came out of retirement is because I found a home in Downers Grove. And I'm pretty close to my 5 minutes. I do have one announcement. Last year, I had an event, and I kicked it off with giving barbecue away, VIP giveaway, in front of First Congregational Church. It was a startup rally to doing community awards. And I had an event on June 17th. yes, that's my birthday. So it was kind of a sneaky way to have fun and not let people have fun. Well, I have an announcement tonight. We're starting a rally again, and this is the public announcement. Since it's my company, it's called James Kelly Publishing Company, LLC. My announcement is the award this year, community service person, is going to your mayor. The reason why is because he's been a major inspiration to me, and most of all, it reminds me of old school. I was going here, going there, going there, and one day I called him up and jokingly said, "Hey, you got some tools I can borrow?" And he said, "What do you need?" And it's like, yeah, here, he's a nice guy. He actually showed up with the tools. Where 6 other people that I know, so yeah, I want you this, I want you, what do you need, right? No. The mayor came to where I was staying at the hotel in Downers Grove and brought me a bucket of tools to use to where I could rip up my carpet and do some minor cleanup and adjustment. That's something you don't get from any community. And it's nice to actually feel like I have a home somewhere for my business. It's been I've been retired for 25 years. I used to make all kinds of money. And it's not about money, but to be comfortable. And this community is really awesome. And a couple of people that I know in marketing companies that are still around, all of a sudden they're sending me emails of the 10 friendliest cities. Well, of course, guess which is one on there, Downers Grove. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else with subjects not on tonight's agenda?
David Rose, for the record. Thanks largely to Marshall Schmidt's excellent presentation to the Plan Commission on the 10th of January. Come to appreciate the Longfellow situation exposes several fatal flaws in governmental processes in Downers Grove and in the village's comprehensive plan. 2 are foundational. What's the purpose of the comp plan if it can be blithely ignored, as happened with Longfellow? 2, what procedures need to be put in place to acknowledge and safeguard the comp plan to avoid creating future messes like the one we have now with Longfellow? By my assessment, the comp plan is also fatally flawed because it admittedly ignores financial considerations. Imagining the 2 are separate for discussion's sake could not be more self-deceptive, as Longfellow also symbolizes. To call the requested language change to be discussed this evening a mere clarification is consistent with Council's habit of defining words in any way it finds convenient, however misleading. Council's most significant misuse of words is the phrase environmental sustainability. This phrase reportedly embodies one of the primary goals of Council, yet it's nothing of the sort. How do we know this? Because neither the phrase nor its ramifications are to be found anywhere in the comp plan. This one, since the early 1970s, the book Limits to Growth called into question capitalism's modus operandi. To state that question explicitly, is capitalism compatible with using all resources at a sustainable rate? Political and business leaders and their sycophantic economists, land use planners, and village managers avoid that question like the plague. The language change being requested concerns the objective of preventing overbuilding in Downers Grove. What's the definition of overbuilding? As practiced for the past many decades, it's an arbitrary notion described essentially by one's notion of a desirable suburb. How and whether a desirable suburb is in fact environmentally sustainable has never been investigated, enunciated, debated, and thus enforced by ordinance in Downers Grove. In other words, as I've stated repeatedly to Council, all the economic development that's occurred in Downers Grove has never been undertaken with an eye toward whether the result is environmentally sustainable. Oh, sure, we pay homage to the environment by preserving Lyman Woods and the Prairie, but these are seen as museum-like relics of a long trampled past on the march of progress to building today's modern desirable suburb. 3 assumptions underlie this march. The growth is ever and always good. Problems created by prior growth are to be solved by more growth, and growth over the long run is not bound. The core assumption, material assumption of this march is that the energy slaves, the fossil fuel-powered machines that make our way of living possible, are unlimited in their supply, of negligible impact in their death, and readily replaceable if and when the time comes. That turns out to be wrong in all 3 counts. Is this failure relevant to the issue under consideration this evening? Absolutely. How so? Because whatever lot width you find acceptable as preventive of overbuilding, whatever notion of house size you believe currently fashionable and thus acceptable, whatever concept of property rights and associated sales income you think you're trying to protect, you're presuming the essence of Downers Grove will continue to be, as the comp plan promotes, simply a better vision of itself as it is today, namely a basically middle to upper middle class suburb wholly dependent on automobiles and other forms of transport, and I would add wholly dependent on exploiting people and places unseen to maintain its way of living and property values. Ignoring the fact this way of living is not environmentally sustainable ignores its derivative implication, namely that at some juncture, when the lack of environmental sustainability becomes increasingly obvious, we will confront a choice. Do we cling to maintaining the good life and property values of Downers Grove by intensifying this exploitation on which we depend, or do we choose to live environmentally sustainably, whatever the consequences may be for property values, the physical pattern of living in the village, and the debt-driven model and property and sales tax-based model of Council's aspirations? Option 2 is terrifying to us, so putting it out of mind, far out of mind, has been the preferred choice up until now. Of course, in recent years, we've seen entire towns burned to the ground and leveled by hurricanes and tornadoes and destroyed by floods and mudslides. Of course, none of this can happen in Downers Grove, or so we wish to believe, and none may. But the specific form lack of sustainability takes is not an issue. The issue is that the lack of sustainability will take some form that will overwhelm us if we do not change course. If you believe me wrong, then do what you failed to do these past many years. Engage on the points I've raised during that time. Explain why the comp plan need not be revised to incorporate environmental sustainability. Explain why the code of Downers Grove need not include ordinances enforcing environmental sustainability. To invoke the metaphor of a currently popular movie, if we don't look up, the asteroid of our ongoing collective willful ignorance and self-indulgence is going to kill us.
Anyone else with subjects not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll continue on with our consent agenda. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too passes unanimously. This brings us to item 7, our active agenda. This is the portion of the meeting where we will be discussing and planning to take action on items previously discussed at a prior meeting. These may have been discussed last week or at multiple occasions prior to that. Is there a motion concerning a plat of subdivision on Dunham Road?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt a resolution approving of the final plat of subdivision for 7135 Dunham Road as presented.
Second.
Any audience questions or comments on this item? Any council comments or questions on this item? Rose, would you please call the roll? Oh, wait, time out, I'm sorry, I didn't see Rich. Rich,
Yeah,
please.
just a brief one. I wanted to thank the Kapovich family, longtime Downers Grove family, for doing this subdivision and investing in the suburbs. So thank you very much.
One more time, anybody else? Rosa, now please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Colavani?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Is there an ordinance concerning outdoor dining?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending outdoor dining provisions as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the audience on outdoor dining in our proposal this evening? Any council comments or questions on this one? I'll just remind everybody that this is a downtown-oriented adjustment, and we are still, I think, I was not at the meeting, but everybody seemed to indicate we have every intention of considering opportunities beyond the downtown at a future date. So, Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Colavini?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That too passes unanimously. That brings us to item 8 on our agenda tonight, our first reading. This is the portion of the meeting where we discuss items on which we do not plan to take action tonight. These are sometimes our first reading of an item, sometimes we have discussed them previously, but these are definitely items we will not be acting on tonight. With that, Manager Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. Only one item on tonight's first reading agenda. It's consideration of an ordinance amending certain provisions in our zoning ordinance. Here to present the background information on this item is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
Thank you, Manager Fieldman. Good evening, Mayor and council members. As Manager Fieldman noted, this is a zoning ordinance text amendments. As many of you know, the comprehensive update to the zoning ordinance was completed in 2014. Since then, about every 12 to 18 months, we come before you with some various text amendments for your consideration. I believe the last time we came before you was in the fall of 2020, and prior to that was in late 2019. All of the proposed amendments are shown in the proposed ordinance attached to the manager's memo. The proposed amendments fall into two categories, new regulations, and then the second category is minor clarifications and modifications to the zoning ordinance. These are clarifications in the code with no current change in practice, and the clarifying language is proposed to reflect the current practices. With regard to the new regulations, I'll go over a few of them that are going to talk about tonight. The first one is donation boxes. Currently, donation boxes are expressly prohibited in the village. Recent challenges to donation box prohibitions have gone before the courts, and the courts have found that donation boxes are a form of charitable solicitation and protected under the First Amendment, so the village is going to change this and require a permit with most likely a nominal fee associated for the permit. The regulations are listed in the proposed ordinance. Another new regulation are telecommunication tower heights in the downtown zoning districts, the institutional zoning districts as well. The downtown regulations follow the B district regulations, the business zoning district regulations, and the INP regulations follow the R districts because that's typically where those INP locations are located, is adjacent to R districts. Electrical vehicle parking, we note a reduction in required parking spaces if electrical vehicle parking is provided. As we move more towards electric vehicles, we think it's important to start taking steps to foster that. And then vegetable gardens, some recent laws from the state have come down regarding vegetable gardens, so we just want to be in line with those laws as well. Well, the second category of text amendments that were proposed are to clarify current practices. So the first one are fueling station drive aisles. These are locations that can be in setbacks. We've seen where some of the drive aisles for those guys are in setbacks. So that's clarifying current language. The second one is compliance with the downtown design guidelines. This is what we've been doing in practice for many years. When we have a development project, we always identify how they're compliant with the downtown design guidelines. So this codifies it with the downtown design guidelines need to be reviewed for special uses and PUDs, which is what we currently already do as well. And then solar panel provisions on accessory structures and driveway and apron widths of the property lines. Just some clarifying factors that came about from discussions with applicants when they've come forward with an item to staff for permits. And then I wanted to spend a little bit more time on the non-conforming lots. This is for non-conforming lots in the residential zoning district. It's come to the village's attention that this section, along with other sections that I just presented, could benefit from a clarification. The clarifying language is in conformance with the policy and intent of the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with current language and application of the current zoning ordinance as it relates to non-conforming lots. Since 2014, the village has consistently applied the ordinance in the manner that is presented with the proposed amendments. The village has completed approximately 160 lot consolidations since that time. The proposed amendments will not alter the application of this section. It will only clarify the existing language to implement an established policy. With regard to the policy intent of the comprehensive plan, as we all know, is an aspirational document, recommendations for a variety of topics, everything from land use to transportation. Zoning ordinance regulations are regulations that dictate how a property owner may use or develop their lot. And again, all of these proposed ordinances in the zoning ordinance are applicable to all properties throughout the village. The proposed clarifying amendment for lot consolidations is applicable for all properties, like I just noted, and it will maintain the consistent application of permitting construction of single detached homes on non-conforming lots. With regard to lot width and lot area, the zoning ordinance regulates previously subdivided lots, regardless of the year that they were subdivided, both lots that are conforming and those that have become non-conforming over time. Previously platted lots have established property rights, including the ability to construct a building or structure on the lot that complies with the bulk requirements and land uses of the zoning ordinance. The subdivision ordinance, as was recently approved just a few minutes ago, is in place to regulate newly proposed lots of record. So that subdivision we just did has regulations regarding new lots. The proposed amendments for the zoning ordinance do not change the subdivision ordinance regulations. As I noted, regardless of the date of the subdivision, previously legally created residential lots may have a single detached home constructed on them, regardless of whether the lot is conforming or non-conforming. The zoning ordinance language in current application has been to require lot consolidation only when a building permit application proposes to construct a single detached house, accessory structure over a lot line under common ownership, as evidenced by the 160 lot consolidations that have been completed since 2014. It should be noted that demolition does not trigger lot consolidation requirements. If a non-conforming structure with regard to setbacks is demolished, a new conforming structure can be built similar to the non-conforming use. It can give way to a conforming use on properties. If the property owner owns multiple adjacent lots, the zoning ordinance does not require the owner to consolidate those lots if they propose to demolish the structure on the lot. If a house is constructed entirely on a single lot of record, there's not been a requirement to consolidate the lot with the adjacent lot. The practice has been to consolidate when the house or an accessory structure or an addition crosses over that common lot line. With regard to construction on non-conforming lots, a lot that was previously subdivided, again, it might have become non-conforming, can still be developed with allowable structures and uses regardless of lot width and lot area. The zoning ordinance does not require immediate construction of a structure on a lot, but there are many subdivisions in town where lots of records have sat vacant for many years, and vacancy does not impact the property rights of the lot. You can still construct a permitted structure and place a permitted use on those vacant lots. As previously noted, demolition does not trigger the lot consolidation requirement, and it is not uncommon here in the village for property owners to purchase a neighboring lot or a neighboring house and potentially tear that house down and use that house for a yard. So that's an allowable use of that vacant lot. And there's also, if an individual wishes to place an accessory structure on that vacant lot, that's a special use process that would go before the Planning Commission and Village Council for approval. I'd like to provide a couple of examples on how this regulation has been practiced in the past. So the first example is at the southwest corner of Maple Avenue and Sherman Avenue. The aerial images are shown here in 1998, 2006, and 2021. In 1998, there was a private owner. You can see there's one structure and a driveway on 5 lots of record. In 2001, the Park District purchased the land and subsequently removed the structures. In 2011, the village's comprehensive plan that was updated at that time identified the property as park and open space based on its land use at the time. In 2016, forgetting to move the slide here, but in 2016, the Park District sold the land to a private developer who owns all 5 of the lots. In 2017, a permit was issued for the house shown in the 2021 aerial right here in this area right there. So there's a house that was permitted there. The lot and the lot to the south of it do not meet the minimum lot width requirements. At the time of the permit, they were both owned by a common owner. Because the house was not proposed to cross a lot line and it met the bulk requirements of the zoning ordinance, the house was allowed to be permitted and constructed that way as well. Again, they were owned by the same person, but the lot consolidation requirements did not kick in. In 2017, when the comprehensive plan was updated, the future land use plan identified this property as single-family detached based on the use of the land. The next example I'd like to show is a permit at 540 Prairie Avenue. Again, this is a private owner that when they submitted their platted survey, we identified that there are two lots of records, lots 59 and lot 60. The proposal was to demolish the structures on the existing property and to construct a new home in that location. Based on this proposal to construct a home over a common lot line, a lot consolidation was required. And so when the lot consolidation was completed, it ended up being lot 1 in the subdivision there, so this homeowner could build their property there as well. With regard to the factors for consideration, staff has found that those have been met. All the proposed amendments are in conformance with the comprehensive plan in order to review and update the zoning ordinance regularly, ensure quality housing stock is a community staple, provide a diversity of housing stock, and ensure that the permitting process accommodates residential renovation and redevelopment through a consistent, expedient, and thorough process. With regard to the second factor for consideration, the proposed new regulations are addressing a changing condition based on recent case law and recent state laws that have been passed. And with regard to the clarifying amendments, all requests are consistent with how this has been practiced. We will not be changing current policy or its application, and they do implement an established policy there as well. I've served in my current role since 2015, and I can say that the proposed language for the lot consolidations is consistent with village practices. It's no different than the other clarifying language where we've determined that certain portions of the code could use a little bit of an update and some clarification to make it the code clear that way. The Planning Commission held 2 public hearings. In both hearings, they recommended unanimous approval of all the text amendments except for the lot consolidation clarification. And with regard to the lot consolidation clarification, the first meeting they recommended approval of the lot consolidation amendment, while the second meeting the motion to recommend approval failed. Staff is in support of these text amendments and believes the factors for consideration have been met. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, Mayor, or the other council members.
Thank you, Stan. We're going to take audience input first here.
Sure.
But just before you leave, to clarify 2 things. The lot consolidation portion, which did not receive Plan Commission recommendation, does not change current practice, correct?
That is correct.
And does that non-conforming lots portion amendment change any development rights within the village?
It does not.
Okay. All right. We will now take audience comments or questions on any of the proposed amended changes.
Marshall Schmidt. So first of all, 5 minutes is not enough to address this. The Plan Commission deliberated over it and gave us plenty of time and allowed the community to exhaustively explore the issue, and they went from a 4-3 vote in favor to a unanimous vote against. I encourage everyone to listen to what happened at the Plan Commission, because at the end of the day, the commissioners understood that this ordinance is not a conforming ordinance, and that it changes the language, the substantive language of the provision. So the 2 questions that the mayor asked were really circular. There's been no evidence that this was the policy. In fact, the evidence is the exact opposite. If you look at the practice before the comprehensive zoning reform, the practice is what was done on Sherman, and that was changed. And the legislative history of that ordinance makes very clear that it was changed to give more flexibility and to implement the 75-foot width requirement. So it's not correct to say that the 75-foot requirement was intended to only apply to new subdivisions. It's just not true. As to the examples that were presented, the second example regarding Prairie is consistent with the language, perfectly consistent with the existing language. It doesn't mention at all crossing lot lines. It has to do with common ownership of adjacent lots. So the 540 Prairie example is an example of how the language change is going to comply to policy. And the other example, I'm a little surprised that Mr. Popovich used that chart, because we pointed out at the Plan Commission that between the second and third image, there was a reconfiguration of the lots so that the overall 5-lot plat was different in terms of the lot list. But just because there's one example that's been presented where that was the practice, that does not make a policy. No matter how many times the Plan Commission, or excuse me, no matter how many times the staff says, this is policy, this is policy, this is policy, it doesn't make it policy. And even if that policy is contrary, or if that policy is contrary to the language of the statute, that's not a text amendment. That's a change. That's adopting a new policy that is not supported by the language. The 150 consolidations, or 160 consolidations that have been referred to repeatedly at this meeting are meaningless. I served a FOIA request after the first round and specifically requested the documentation for every example that the staff intended to use to support the text amendment. Information was provided regarding 3. One isn't even been presented. And the other 2 we've talked about don't prove anything. If the 160 are so compelling, where are they? What are those? They weren't given to me. If they're so compelling, why weren't they presented to you? The staff has also emphasized that no property rights would be changed. That was the mayor's second question. Again, a circular conclusion. The reason no property rights are going to be changed with regard to Longfellow in the staff's mind, and perhaps the mayor's mind, is because before the bidding concluded, it was announced how this statute would be interpreted. It was announced that they would be able to build 12 homes. But when this was pointed out, everyone scrambled. Suddenly they had to amend the code. Suddenly this was so confusing. Read the language. Nowhere in the language of this ordinance as it currently exists can you find any support whatsoever for the interpretation that is now being given to this. A clarifying amendment applies to something that's unclear, but you at least have an argument that the interpretation can be found in the ordinance. You can't find it. This doesn't pass the straight face test. And by the end of the Plan Commission meeting, all 7 commissioners realized that. And what they said was, you're changing the practice. You need to consider this as a change in practice and give it its full due. Give it a full hearing. Consider whether you're changing a practice that is going to seriously affect the future of the village, because Longfellow is not unique. When the Bel Air School is sold, you're going to face the same question. When other properties in the village are sold, you're going to face the same question. But if you change this, you can hide behind it with regard to Longfellow, but it's going to come back to bite you when it happens again and again and again. Because this interpretation is going to do serious damage to the village. You need to consider it properly and fully before you change the zoning ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Others on any of the proposed amendments to our code?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Manager Fieldman. My name is Joe Leo. I won't repeat everything that Marshall has said, as I'm in agreement. But there is one other point that I want to bring up, and something I understand and can appreciate, that there might be a concern that a resident that owns adjacent non-conforming lots and has their house on one side and wants the ability to sell the other could, to a different party to put a house on it. It's a legitimate concern, and I guess maybe it's as simple as saying, instead of 2 contiguous lots, change that to 3 contiguous lots. That would protect the majority of individuals faced with this potential dilemma. But I would say that shouldn't be just a text amendment. Again, I really think it's important that we have a full discussion as a community. And something else that we've been told in different ways, that this change doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Longfellow. That was long overdue. And that's great, which tells me that then it's not urgent. Let's table this piece, have a time to have the community come together, not only thoughtfully, but collaboratively with you guys, determine how this 75-foot ordinance should be interpreted. Not a big ask. In conclusion, our past village leaders and you guys are committed to preserving the balance between tradition and progress. Let's not lose track of that and honor that balance and what the comprehensive plan truly stands for. We're counting on your leadership. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else on any of the amendments?
I'm not really sure if this is to do with the amendment or not, but it is a concern about the proposed Longfellow development. I'm Carol Jean Davis, and I live on Lee Avenue, and I moved in about 5 years ago from Lake County. And a while back, the zoning where the Longfellow Center was I found out it was originally educational, school, public use, something like that. And it had been changed to residential, and I don't recall when that happened. It was before I moved here. And my suggestion when I found out about that was, well, change it back to some sort of public use. Obviously, that didn't happen, and the property was sold to residential developers. And I came and I spoke out against it being sold to a residential developer. So anyway, we cannot put that genie back into the bottle. And earlier this week, I took a long look through the zoning ordinance text amendments, a 124-page document with lots and lots of words. So I'll try to be brief and not use so many words and get to my point. Regarding Longfellow, I fully understand that the proposed lot sizes will be 12,000 square feet and exceed the 10,500 foot minimum. However, I am still concerned about the potential flooding and wet basements should 12 homes be built in that area. I am specifically worried about a developer building giant houses without enough permeable surfaces to handle runoff rainwater and winter ice melt. To the naked eye, you can see that Longfellow is in a low-lying area. And you can verify this if you look at topographical maps. There's only so much a storm sewer can do in a low-lying area. And hopefully tonight you will vote down or move slowly and amend any language in that 124 document that allows homes to be built on lots too small to handle heavy rainfall or snow melt or some combination of the two. There are older homes in that area that don't have sump pumps. I think at one of the previous meetings I attended, there was a resident that said that their older home did not have a sump pump. And I'd like to add that a sump pump is going to do nothing when a storm sewer is overwhelmed and there is nowhere for that water to go but into your basement. I know this because my house in Mundelein was affected by new housing developments. As time went on, we discovered that we were at a low point before water flowed into a lake. As new developments sprung up across the highway, so did our flooding issues. We regularly had runoff water 8 inches deep in one of our basement window wells, as the water did what water does, seek the lowest point, which in our case was a nearby lake. We resorted to annual sandbagging of our patio before the winter snow settled in. We put a sump pump in that basement window well. Fortunately, we had enough resources, including money, about $16,000 to eventually fix this problem. We raised the grade around our house, and we got the water to flow around us, going down the street and into the lake. Is this what you want to subject the current residents of the surrounding area to? And these homes, they're so close together. Where are they supposed to send that water? Down the hill to flood people's basements on Warren? It's bad enough that a huge chunk of much-needed absorbent green space was sold to a residential developer. Don't make it worse by creating wet basements for existing homeowners. I can't control how you're going to amend the document up for discussion and vote, but I can at least say to my friends and neighbors that I tried to mitigate the damage of potential flooding and wet basements, and I did so on public record. Thank you. I also wanted to note that on Agenda Item 7, that was on the action items tonight, there are 6 residential lots on Dunham Road, and I couldn't help but notice that part of that requirement was an outlet for stormwater. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Others on the amendments tonight?
My name is Matthew Claus. I own a home at 4821 Montgomery, and I own a vacant lot just to the north of that. Just a little bit about a personal experience I had with trying to get a permit in Downers Grove, and a little bit about history, my history, and the history of my family. I wanted to put a natural gas fire pit in my vacant lot just to the north of me. I had a little patio back there, and I couldn't get a permit for that because they consider a natural gas fire pit, this is like 42 inches in diameter, about this big. They consider that to be a secondary structure. You can't put a secondary structure on a lot without a primary structure. Okay, that's the code. I followed the code. So I thought, I'll put it on my lot. I have a primary structure on my lot. My home is there. So I went to get the permit. I would have had to put a 20 by 25 foot flagstone patio back there, a place to set chairs on, on the fire pit. They wouldn't give me the permit because a 20 by 25 foot flagstone patio wouldn't allow me enough permeable ground, and I might flood the neighborhood. I've been in Downers Grove my whole life. I've lived in this home for 42 years. My parents went to Longfellow School. My dad was a pin setter at the historic Tivoli bowling alley. My grandma worked at the historic Mokel hardware store. She was the one who ran the register there. My parents met at the historic Downers Grove Community High School, and they got married and they raised a hysterical family. And we've been in Downers Grove for so many years, it's ridiculous. And to see what's happening, well, what might be happening across the street from me, is totally disparaging. To come in and rip out a historical building, tear out a historical grove of oak trees, and to cram 12 mega homes on what's right now 8 buildable lots is disruptive. It's disgusting. To put 8 homes in there, it's disruptive. I've seen what happens down the neighborhood when it rains. I've seen so many different things happen in the 42 years I've lived there. It doesn't flood me. I'm okay. But all my neighbors down the street are getting flooded. And then all that water runs down into the, okay, we have a 72-inch reinforced concrete drainage pipe under our street. And all that drains out by Jacqueline Drive over by Mokel, by the park there, Gilbert Park, by Mokel Drive. And that runs into St. Joseph's Creek. When I was a kid, I used to play in that creek. It was a lot smaller than it is now. It's eroded immensely. And not only is it going to flood our neighborhood, it's going to flood and disrupt the whole, everybody that lives along that creek. It's taking their property away because of the erosion that's happening. You can't allow this to be reworded. I wish you could not allow 8 homes to go in there, but there's not much you could do about that. But to allow 12 homes to go in there, disgusting. It tells me there might be a double standard going on here in Downers Grove. And if you people allow this, I'm seeing money talks and history walks.
All right, before we go any further, most of you have been to our meetings or watched them. Let's not do the applause. We really don't want that going back and forth. You can see how, depending on the subject, depending on the crowd, that could turn into a back and forth all night of applause. We're here to take all the comments, and we really appreciate people taking the time to come out and give them to us. We'd like to keep the meeting structured. Anyone else want to speak to the amendments this evening?
think I can take my microphone off. I'm more than 6 feet away from anybody. My name is Richard D. Mink. I reside at 4904 Seeley Avenue in the village. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and all your commissioners for your service. I am sure we have had no idea of the time and the effort which goes into your jobs. It is appreciated. Having said that, I wish to add my objection to the proposed change in the building ordinance, which you are considering, along with many other citizens who have spoken before you and will continue to speak tonight, or have contacted you by email. I believe the change you are considering violates the spirit of the 2014 Comprehensive Plan, which designates Longfellow Center as a public space and encourages its protection. The plan encourages its protection, not its destruction, as I feel would ultimately result if the proposed change becomes effective. On a related topic, as you know, application has been made before the National Register for Historic Preservation and is also with Environmental Illinois. These petitions have both been filed. With regard to the Environmental Illinois, that petition was filed in early January this year. I contacted Environmental Illinois recently to ask for their assistance and pointed out my concern that this building might be destroyed before Environmental Illinois has an opportunity to determine if this building should be included in the endangered category. We understand that this determination will occur sometime this April. As of this morning, you should have been, hopefully you all received an email from Mrs. Lisa DeShera, whose name I'm probably mispronouncing. She's the director of advocacy at Environmental Illinois. In that role, she manages all the applications relating to the designation of endangered historic buildings. Although I did not receive this email until around 8 o'clock this morning, and with all the items each of you has before you, you may not have seen this email. Therefore, I'd like to read a very brief portion to the record, and I quote, "We understand there are many citizens of Downers Grove who would like to see the 1928 built Longfellow School, otherwise known as Longfellow Center today, at 1435 Prairie repurposed. We also understand it has been purchased by a new owner whose intent is demolition and to build new single-family homes, we think 12, on this property. Landmarks Illinois, for over our 50 years, has grown into a statewide voice for historic preservation in Illinois, and we have helped people save almost 24,000 places that are special to them and to their communities, We provide advocacy and technical assistance to help save older and historic buildings like Longfellow Center. We are happy to assist with the analysis of this building to determine its ability to be converted to housing or ancillary uses. In keeping with the Village of Downers Grove with its sustainability best practices, Landmarks Illinois firmly believes every building, despite its age, should be thoroughly evaluated for reuse before demolition. One of our guiding principles is to become more knowledgeable about preservation's role in confronting climate change and to actively promote this message. We hope the Village Council will give further consideration to discussions with the builder's new owner regarding reuse options and prevent Longfellow from becoming waste entering a landfill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Terry Mahoney. I live at 4832 Montgomery. I grew up here in Downers Grove like Matt. I went to St. Mary's, graduated from Herrick and Downers North in the 1970s. And in 1988, I bought a 1,400 square foot home on a 60-foot lot, which was typical of the houses in the northwest section of Downers Grove. Downers Grove has changed a lot in the last 34 years that I've been a homeowner here. And unlike a lot of people my age, I actually think these changes we have seen, a much more vibrant downtown, re-energized commercial areas, that while we still preserve neighborhoods, are accomplishments that should be celebrated. The world changes, people's wants and needs change, and communities like Downers Grove have to evolve and adapt. One such welcome adaptation was the increase in residential lot width requirements. In 1920, when the Brannigar Wooded home sites was platted with 60 and even some 50-foot lots, houses were much smaller. Sears homes were very common in Downers Grove. A large Sears home was 2,000 square feet. Some, including one that is actually at the other end of the block from Longfellow, were less than 1,000 square feet. Cars were rare. Less than 10% of people in 1920 owned cars, so they did not have driveways or garages, further reducing the level of impermeable surface. In 1920, 60-foot wide lots made sense. And what I would do is, I went out to look on, and I found on the U of I website, fire insurance maps. I don't know if you've ever seen these. These are Sanborn, but Sanborn fire insurance maps. And unfortunately, this didn't print very well, so I'll send you the link to these. But it was fascinating to me to see, this is the area bounded by Franklin, Chicago, and from Oakwood to Saratoga. And you can see the structures that are on here occupy a very small portion of these 60-foot wide lots. And I don't know if I can leave this here. Sure. All right. So the lot width requirement was changed. It's reasonable to ask, why was this increase from 60 to 75 foot in residential areas made? Very few small homes are constructed in Downers Grove these days. We know the floor plans that are proposed for the Longfellow development include homes that are over 4,500 square feet. That is typical of home construction going on today in Downers Grove, and 75-foot wide lots make more sense given the size of 21st century homes. I will say also that when I was searching for those maps, I also found the Downers Grove Reporter from 1920, one of the Downers Grove reporters, and they had an obituary of a Downers Grove resident who, like me, was a veteran, except he was a veteran of the Civil War. So the platting of these lots in the northwest section was actually done when there were Civil War veterans living in Downers Grove. The current zoning code states when two or more contiguous non-conforming lots are held in common ownership, the lots must be consolidated in order to meet or come closer to meeting applicable minimum lot area and lot width requirements. To me, and to several members of the Plan Commission, that's unequivocal language. The village is citing a couple of examples. We know that on one of those examples, the lot lines were not correct as presented. And on the other one, something that wasn't pointed out, those were the one that was consolidated on Prairie, 540 Prairie, those were two 26-foot wide lots. I'm not sure that's relevant to the conversation about shrinking from 75 to 60. So this change, this material change to the zoning requirements, is based on rationale that I don't believe supports basically eviscerating the 75-foot wide lot requirement for residential zoning that was passed several years ago. I respectfully ask that you decline this petition and vote no next week on the material change to the zoning code.
Thank you. Others?
Hi, I'm Julie Bretthauer, 4909 Montgomery. I'd like to urge you to vote nay on this proposed text amendment. Staff may feel that it is a minor text change, but in the real world, this has material impact on those of us that live in the surrounding area. Not just us, but as one of my other commentators said, those of us or other people in the village who might find themselves in this situation going forward. So it doesn't only have to do with us around surrounding Longfellow, but other people in the village as well. So I'm going to urge you to vote nay. Thank you.
Thank you. Others on the amendments tonight?
Hi, I'm late. Do I need to swear or anything? Okay. I'm Mary Ann Einerson. I'm at 1302 59th Street. 198,000 gallons. That's 123,750 toilet flushes. 12,500 10-minute showers. 6,600 bathtubs. Or maybe it's easier to picture 600 5-person hot tubs or 20 large above-ground pools. That's how much stormwater Longfellow's mature trees have been soaking up every year, protecting the neighborhood for nearly a century, mostly. Even with these trees' superpowers and some help from a little bit of open space and smaller trees, this neighborhood already has flooding. They've had water troubles since at least the 50s. It's no secret it's getting worse every year. Take out those trees, and you know they cannot be saved if you're putting 8 or 12 homes on that property. Lose the stormwater mitigation of those trees, and you are releasing 200,000 gallons of new, extra stormwater into a system that today can't handle a heavy rain. It's no secret that I'm all for the trees. But for me, this isn't about losing trees, or losing a historic building, or even selling public land. That ship has sailed. This is about flooding. This is about preventing more costly stormwater projects that we all have to pay for. I'm the daughter of an engineer, and he specialized in land development. Starting out at White & Company here in Downers Grove back in the 50s. As a kid, I didn't understand his passion to keep the water away from buildings, keep the water away in their new subdivisions. He'd be working late at night on those topographic maps in the basement. I even remember visiting subdivision drainage sites with him on the weekends. For me, it was just an excuse to hang out with him. We'd even stop by water treatment plants when we were on vacation. I didn't get it then, but he was really, really into it. Anyway, I guess it rubbed off on me because I'm seeing something bad coming and I feel the need to say something. You don't need to be a civil engineer to see that once this land is cleared, there will be flooding. Make that there will be more flooding. There's already flooding here. I'm sure people have talked about this already. Can I assume people have talked about that? I'm late here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I won't go into that. But again, this is all happening now. So what happens when 200,000 more additional gallons of stormwater are unleashed into this neighborhood? We're all here to discuss this zoning change, this text amendment. It's really to remind you of our concerns about overbuilding. Less yard, more hard surface, more stormwater flooding. Longfellow would just be the first project to take advantage of this proposed text amendment, this developer loophole. And it might just be the worst case scenario. I mean, maybe the Longfellow property is basically a white elephant. Build on it, flood the neighborhood, everyone loses. Except the developer, who's left town with 20% more profit and left Downers Grove with yet another expensive stormwater project that we all have to pay for. So what's best for Downers Grove? I mean, that's why we're all here, right? Again, this is specifically Longfellow, but it's a pretty easy example. What is better for Downers Grove? Say $65,000 in tax revenue, or $650,000 for another stormwater project. And I gotta say, that's a lowball number. It just sounded good, because based on what happened at Jefferson and Middaugh, what's gonna have to happen at Longfellow is way bigger, probably closer to $1 million. And I know, Longfellow. But again, this is just the first project, but it's a really good example of what could happen anywhere in Downers Grove if this amendment passes. I don't know about you, but is there anyone here that wants extra stormwater pouring into their neighborhood? Downers Grove's stormwater management has enough on their plate. From now through 2024, their budget is over $11 million, and they're issuing another $5 million bond later this year. And our stormwater fees will be going up 9% every year. If this text amendment passes, it opens the door, it opens the floodgates, to let developers leave town with 20% more profit and leave Downers Grove homeowners with more stormwater problems that we all have to pay for. If this text amendment passes, you'd be giving outside developers a loophole, a huge advantage over homeowners, allowing them to basically put more house on less land, allowing them to put more stormwater into our already struggling system, allowing them to harm our infrastructure that we all pay for. If this change wouldn't affect the Longfellow property, as we've been told, then why is it being rushed through like this? It seems that we, the Downers Grove homeowners, should be in the loop on something as critical as a zoning change. This change can only be good for developers. It's clearly not in the village's best interest. It could do great harm to our infrastructure and no doubt would create more water problems. So in light of our multi-million-dollar, ever-growing stormwater budget, I hope you'll agree that we should do our best to prevent flooding, to keep all of our neighborhoods safe and dry, and vote no to Section 28.11.020B. Please also keep in mind your Longfellow neighbors who are already worrying about spring rains. Again, 600 5-person hot tubs, 20 large above-ground pools, 198,000 gallons of additional stormwater. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to the amendments proposed this evening?
Hi, my name is Doug White. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the stormwater. Now, I know we've received emails from a lot of the council that says that this is not a Longfellow issue and that this isn't the stormwater issue. We've said that, we've heard over and over again that the stormwater policies don't change. Well, that's just like the circular reference that we talked about earlier, the circular conversation. That's true, but think about it. 2 houses, each on a 60-foot lot, or 1 house on a 120-foot lot. Think about the difference in volume. Think about the difference in open space. Why are we so concerned about this? Yes, it has to do with Longfellow, and I'll pass this around. Look at the map of the elevation of this area. All of the green is lighter. All of the red is lower. All of the red is higher. Everything comes down, and the lowest point is right at Longfellow, and then right below Longfellow is all this deep blue. Would you rather have 8 houses on here or 12 houses jammed together taking up all of the space? This original zoning was meant to protect us and protect things like this. Yes, Longfellow should have never been sold based on where this water is going to be flowing into our backyards. But even if it is, and even if that ship has sailed, this at least partially protects us so we get 8 houses, not 12. I'm going to pass this around so you can actually see the color changes and the elevation changes of all of that water that's going to come down right into us. This zoning law was passed to protect us and protect us in situations like this. This is not a simple text amendment. This is not a simple clarification. This is a change, and it should give it its due value, its due time. When you talk about the 7-0 vote against this from the Planning Commission, their number one thing that they said was wait. Let's talk about this. Let's do this the right way. Let's have open dialogue. What is the rush? Well, let me tell you what the rush is. Delivery of those houses by October. That is what is on the developer's website now. Pushing this off a month, pushing this off 2 months, affects that date, affects that change. We are rushing to this for the October delivery of a developer, not the residents that are going to get the flooded water down. Okay, let's take this aside and say, okay, if you don't think about the developer, why else is this being rushed? Well, D58 has a tax levy that they want to put out there in October. Do you think they want to vote on a tax levy when they have houses half built, trees getting cut down, mud running down those streets? No, they want that tax levy to be put on the ballot after that's all cleaned up and there's nice houses there. They didn't want to remind the neighborhood that this is what they did when they sold that. The final point I want to mention, how did we get here? November 13th, 40 residents jammed coffee with council. One of the largest we've had. I believe it was Nicole who stood in front of us and said, what do you want us to do with Longfellow? As long as they follow the zoning, there's nothing we can do. Boom, text amendment next time through. So either at that coffee and council, when this council told us there's nothing we can do about Longfellow as long as they follow the zoning, either you didn't know your own zoning or you're moving the goalposts. This change of this amendment is moving the goalposts. Thank you.
Thank you. Others on the amendments proposed this evening?
David Rose. I'll just say quickly, I concur with the sentiments you've heard this evening. I just want to add, though, that in light of the way I've seen council operate in the past and its capacity to make decisions not on the basis of logic, evidence, and critical thinking, I wish in this particular situation you would do your best to explain, for example, if you do have a difference between the Plan Commission's 0-7 vote, what the basis of that difference is, and any related understandings you can provide that counters the arguments you're hearing this evening about why this, from your perspective, is a simple textual clarification. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Roman Giesier. I live in the 4500 block of Linscott Avenue, and although I'm not directly impacted by what's going on at Longfellow, I do live very close to Pierce Downer, Herrick, and Downers Grove North High School, and I'd be concerned that a text amendment that's being proposed would potentially have significant impact on where I live 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now if 60-foot wide lots were built upon. So there's a lot of random properties around Herrick, and I'd be really concerned that those lot lines are changed and could potentially have an impact on my family and myself. So thanks for listening, and I hope you do the right thing.
Thank you.
Sarah Demink, 4904 Sealy. I urge you to maintain our current ordinance that we have and vote no against the text amendment. I believe, I don't want to go over everything again, but one issue that hasn't been mentioned, by preserving the 75-foot requirement, it also protects a very important infrastructure in many of the lots that we have. And that infrastructure is our green spaces, our trees, okay? And I just received some very important information from the Morton Arboretum CRTI, which is the Chicago Regional Trees Initiative. And I urge you to check out their information that they have on their website, which states communities that don't invest in trees risk losing out on the benefits that trees provide. And as the previous speaker has discussed with the stormwater issues, but trees also provide so many other resources. So by destroying so many trees on this site of Longfellow, as just one example, you are destroying a very important infrastructure. And one of the things that's pointed out in this information, and Brooke McDonald, who is the director of Conservation Foundation, concurs, the irreplaceable resource, especially of the oaks, and many of them which are bur oaks on this property, can live to be 200 to 300 years old. And I think many people don't realize that. So they're worth protecting. So that's my main point. And overall, preserving the ordinance will help protect these natural spots in our village. By cramming in a house where there's no room for trees or native plants, or really anything, it deteriorates the whole quality of the area. And of course, Longfellow is a perfect example. So thank you, and I hope you can vote against the amendment. And I do agree that we should have a more public discourse about really what we see for the future of our village, what we really want it to look like. And I believe, even Mr. Gilmartin, you mentioned this when you ran, that you had a lot of ideas about what we need to do to maintain the authentic quality of our neighborhoods and our natural areas. And that's really what I think we need to spend some more time discussing, rather than rushing this through. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to the proposed amendments this evening?
Hello, my name is Pam Johnson. I live at 4833 Montgomery Avenue. I would like to request the village commissioners vote nay on the proposed changes to non-conforming lots, section 2811-020B. Why should you vote nay? I have 4 points I'd like to discuss. First of all, the petitioners claim that the ordinance is not followed today, so thus it should be changed, is a false premise. Just because the ordinance has not been followed is not a valid reason to change it. Excuse me. Furthermore, the petitioner has failed to come up with any relevant examples of not following the ordinance going back almost 20 years, which negates the first claim. This is not a common situation, but when it happens, it will have a significant impact and needs to be considered carefully, as is the case with Longfellow, or as a future property such as schools or churches are sold. Third, this change goes against a comprehensive plan that states it is important that new residential construction to be consistent with the existing or desired neighborhood character. The petitioner even stated the villager's comprehensive plan recommends ensuring compatibility with the scale and character of the surrounding and adjacent neighborhoods. Sorry, I'm out of breath. I was running here.
Take your time.
What is the existing character of much of Downers Grove, including Longfellow? It is mature and historic. The Longfellow property is the last remaining undeveloped parcel owned by Pierce Downer. It has many historic sites just steps from it, including the Pierce Downer home, Pierce Downer well, Earl Prince House, and many Sears homes. The Longfellow property is situated within the historic E.H. Prince neighborhood. the E.H. Prince and Company's advertising describes the subdivision as featuring high rolling ground with magnificent trees, beautiful lake, pure water, and pure air, what we would call today green space. If you look throughout Downers Grove, the historic homes that are roughly the same size and square footage of the new homes planned today, including at Longfellow, they're all on double lots, or even much more, much bigger than 60-foot lots. These historic buildings allowed for ample space between homes for lawns, sunlight, trees, and privacy. The property owners wanted an environment different from the Chicago neighborhoods they came from, where buildings were lot line to lot line, with dark shadows and views of blank walls or your neighbor's private life. In fact, if you look at other historic blocks near Longfellow, there are multiple examples of streets that have only 4 lots across that space, including Middaugh, Saratoga, and Prince Streets. This establishes a clear precedent of larger lots in the neighborhood, and these lots include a mix of both new and historic homes. Our modern community also seeks less density and more open space, which is consistent with a comprehensive plan. Changing the code to allow the building of a dense, multi-home development with houses built lot line to lot line, with no privacy or ample side yard green space, and the destruction of mature trees is not in keeping with the existing scale or existing desired neighborhood character specified in the village's comprehensive plan. If the village lets this pass, you will allow a new development to run unchecked and destroy the character of a beloved historic neighborhood, and no doubt many other Downers Grove neighborhoods in the future. And my fourth point, what can be done? For those who think the village can do nothing at this point, please consider a very similar example in Hinsdale. The same developer that owns Longfellow, McNaughton, tried to develop a very dense subdivision, trying to not follow the ordinances there, by Fullersburg Woods, known for its natural beauty. After significant neighbor opposition, similar to what we have here in Downers Grove, the Hinsdale Village trustees voted it down, saying, "The neighbor's opposition taints my view of the development. We were put here to sit at the table to represent the views of residents. For the neighbors, their houses are the biggest investments of their lives, and the nearby subdivision would impact them for a long time. Please look to the example in Hinsdale and take the recommendation of the Downers Grove Plan Commission and vote nay on the changes to the non-conforming lot ordinance." Thank you.
Thank you. Others on the amendments proposed this evening?
Hello, my name is Ian Ogden. I live at 4810 Saratoga. Anybody who knows me knows I like history and I read a lot. So I think that, frankly, let me compose my thoughts here. So if you had to change the lot lines, I think that it definitely, you allow yourself to start packing houses in more tightly. Larger houses, smaller lots. And then what happens is that you end up having less green space, less trees, less growth, less space for nature. Even the people in Chicago, when they did the Chicago City Plan in the early 1900s, just realized that green space like that, like what we have at Longfellow, like what we would have between all of our houses and trees like that, green space increases morale, increases productivity, helps people have generally a more peaceful life, a happier life. And I think that if we start to erode that, like what we're planning to do here, that can actually start to kind of reduce morale and make this place a lot less happy. And I know that this is called Downers Grove because it's it was named for the trees. So I think that we should take a special effort to preserve those trees. So, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Kathy Olson, and I live on the south side of the tracks of this
Longfellow, and I'd just like to say that you should try to do whatever is the least disturbing to the neighborhood. So, because whatever water comes there ends up by my house. I'm on the creek, and I've been here 11 years. And since we've been here, in that 11 years, we've lost at least 12 feet of our property because the creek is getting bigger and bigger and deeper, and it takes away at least 12 feet, 6 feet on each side, and it may be more. I haven't gone out there and measured it, but I'm just concerned as well, not just for myself, but I do really wish there was a way that we could save those ancient, old trees and nature, because that's my thing as well. I care about that, and I care about what Downers Grove looks like. So I would just like to say, I was reminded by the gentleman over there who was talking about the creek. So, so now I'm saying something. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to the amendments tonight?
Marianne Badke, 5408 Carpenter Street. I don't have anything additional to add. I kind of agree with everything that's been said, but I just hope you vote nay on the amendment. And it's really important, I think, to try and promote the green space because of all the other reasons. But also I do think it takes a little more time and consideration to figure out what's really right in that amendment. So please vote nay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, nobody jumping up. Anyone on the council have any comments or questions about the proposed amendments? Correct.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions, just for staff. I've been up here for 8.5 years, and I was on the Plan Commission before that, so I thought I knew this stuff cold, but I thought I would go ahead and ask a couple of clarifying things. First off, what's the definition of a text amendment?
Any change to the language of the zoning code or any part of the municipal code.
Thank you. Second, what is the process required for enacting a text amendment?
For the zoning ordinance, it's a required public hearing before the Plan Commission and then an action by the Village Council.
So a text amendment that is proposed that receives 2 hearings before the Plan Commission is actually receiving additional process. Is that true?
I believe it was consistent with the requirements in our own code.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Other questions, comments from the council? Rich?
I have a question because there were so many issues related to stormwater. Do all new buildings in the village, are they subject to our stormwater requirements, stormwater detention requirements?
All new buildings?
Structures, buildings?
There are, almost all of them are. There are a couple of exceptions for structures that are less than a certain threshold square footage.
Other comments or questions from council? A lot to digest here. I had a couple of questions, Dave. These don't necessarily need to be answered this evening, but if you have them at hand, or Stan has them at hand. One of the other amendments had to do with breezeways and connections to garages and the definition of accessory use with that application. What drove that? Do we know?
We can get back to you on that.
Okay. And then there was some references to carports, and I had sent Enza some photographs, and I'm wondering if we define carport as some of those more portico decorative elements, to be certain I understand the definition of carport as it relates to that.
We will also provide that information.
And then there was some wording that I wasn't I think I might be looking at backwards, but it had to do with aprons and driveways and where they had to be aligned. And I guess I'd like some more description or verbiage as to what's driving that change as well. It seemed a little bit backwards to me, actually. And then the last thing I had that I'd marked up on my sheet was another question about definitions. We talk a little bit about parking pad. It's also related to that apron issue.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if we consider, I don't know the right choice of words, I apologize, but those plastic inserts that are used that you can then grow grass and drive cars on them, if we consider those to be parkable and whether we consider them to be parking pads.
We'll get back to you on all these questions.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments from the council? Nope, okay. That ends our first reading. Dave, over to you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Geez, Rich, you got to yell at me better.
Yeah,
Wave at me.
sorry. I've got a few comments. First of all, it's important to understand that the comprehensive plan is not the Downers Grove Constitution. Is specifically a planning document. And the best analogy I can think of is, let's say your family wants to take a driving vacation this summer to Yellowstone. And that's your plan. And part of that plan is to stop at as many historic and points of interest and scenic things as you possibly can. And then as you get to Yellowstone and you have all the pictures in your phone that shows that you did those things, you can point to that and say, yep, that was our plan, and we went through the Badlands, and we went to see Mount Rushmore, and we did all of that, so that clicks against our plan. The second thing I'd like to point out is I've been sitting up here for almost 3 years, and I sat up here being a Plan Commission member for 2 years and a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for another 2 years. I've seen a few of you people at the Plan Commission meeting. I don't recall seeing any of you at the Zoning Board of Appeals meetings, but those were pretty dry, so I don't blame the residents for not showing up. But I did learn a lot from that. One of the things I learned about the zoning districts related to school is they're zoned according to the underlying land and the adjacent properties. So in this case, an R3 is zoned R3 specifically because they want schools to be in residential areas, so kids can walk to those schools. The second reason for that is when those schools go away, those revert to the residential zoning of the surrounding properties. It's always been my understanding that 50-foot and 60-foot lots, regardless of my personal feelings or my membership in any other group in this village, have been grandfathered in, and that the 75-foot was always for new subdivisions. And we had a specific example at the January 7th, 2019 Plan Commission meeting, and it was related to 2 lots at 4940 Sealy and 1508 Warren. It's a situation where you had a 112.58 foot lot that was 200 feet deep. A gentleman from Chicago bought those 2 non-conforming lots and wanted to re-subdivide them to be 59 or 56.29 feet. What they ended up with, as it went to the village council and was turned down, was 2 non-conforming lots. One is 112 by 120, where the minimum is 75 by 140, and then the 1508 Warren turned out to be 80 by 110, also not 75 feet by 140. So that was been my understanding. That's why I see this as a clarification. It's always been the practice. I've been sitting here in those seats for 7 years, listening to these meetings. You can call Martin Tully, the previous mayor. You can call Bill White, ask them their understanding of it. You can call Commissioner Earl, ask her understanding. You can call Commissioner Durkin and ask him their understanding. So it's always been my understanding. I was elected and swore an oath to follow the Constitution of Illinois, and what's implied in that is the laws of Downers Grove. This body does have the right to change this, if we were to make a change. The other point I'd like to make is that there are people in this town who are specifically counting on being able to sell their 60-foot lot next to their home that has 60 foot. Let's say somebody's been paying for that lot for the last 30 years, it's all paid off, they want to sell it and they want to use it for whatever purpose, they want to retire. They may even want to move from Downers Grove. They have the right to do that. If we take that right from them, that's called a taking. And we're not allowed to do that. So, yeah, I think that's all I have to say in this matter.
Okay, I missed Rich's second wave. Anybody else get a second wave? Okay, now I think we're done, Dave.
Thank you. That does end tonight's first reading, Mayor, and if you'd like, I go right into the manager's report, which does have one item on it.
Yeah, just to clarify for those in attendance tonight, we will be most likely talking about this again next week. We'll see how the conversation goes in planning for that agenda, but it likely will appear as an active agenda item, potentially for action next week. Agendas come out on Friday, so keep your eyes on that. Dave, over to you.
Last week, the village publicly launched a social services referral program. This initiative is a priority action item for the village council, and tonight I will take a few minutes to explain this new service. My presentation tonight will include all the topics shown here on the screen, ranging from the goal of the program, how the program came about, and the services now provided by the village, and some information on initial performance so far. The goal of the Social Services Referral Program is to connect individuals in need of service with the agencies that provide these services. And in doing so, the village seeks to increase not only awareness of these services, but to increase access of residents to these resources and service opportunities. The referral program that we now operate is the product of the Village Council policy direction and the recommendations made by the Human Service Ad Hoc Committee. The council created the ad hoc committee a few years ago and asked them to make recommendations about the village's role in social services. The top recommendation was to create a referral program, and in late 2020, the village council approved an action plan. The plan called for the engagement of professional staff. In August of 2021, just a few months ago, Heather Lippy rejoined our village team. Heather is a seasoned, accomplished professional. She earned a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in social work and has completed advanced certification in gerontology. She has experience as a field social worker, handling guardianship cases and working as a case manager for adults and seniors with mental health and complex medical problems. She also has experience as a medical social worker, working with patients in ICU, pediatrics, and COVID units. Recently, she was awarded the Interprofessional Partner of the Year at St. Joseph Medical Center. Heather is not new to this village. Many of you may know her. You may have heard her voice on the end of a 911 call. That's because Heather spent 20 years working in our own 911 dispatch center, we call the VOC, prior to the village's participation in the regional dispatch center, DUCOM. We are so glad to have her back in this new capacity. Welcome back, Heather. The plan also called for the relaunching of the Human Service Commission. I am proud to report that the HSC held their first meeting last month. The plan also called for the development of a social services referral program, now underway, and in a few months to identify gaps in service provision and help to create strategies to address those gaps. Well, Heather's been hard at work since her arrival in August. She's identified over 500 social service providers in DuPage County and the metropolitan region. And these agencies, as you can imagine, provide just a wide array of services. Individuals in need of services are identified by village staff as we go about interacting with the public during our course of our normal business. Our public safety teammates regularly become aware of individuals who may benefit from social services. Residents may contact the village directly using a variety of methods. And finally, service providers actually sometimes reach out to Heather seeking her help on referring patients and customers to other agencies. As you might expect, a community as large as ours, the service needs are many and extend to a variety of issues, some of which are shown here on this slide. Individuals are referred to specific service providers by our social worker, as well as members of our police and fire departments. And these referrals are made based on conversations that include a series of questions just to help understand the types of services a resident or member of the public may benefit from. The village does maintain some information about the individuals served by this program, including things like the number and the type of referrals made and the method of those referrals, and we will be reporting out on those as this program goes on. In just the first 6 months of the program, and prior to a public launch of the service, over 140 community members have received referrals, and a vast majority of those individuals have followed up and actually received services. We have some numbers here on this slide, but I wanted to go a little step deeper and look at this since Heather's arrival back in August. It's a monthly breakdown. You can see the top line is the number of folks that we did provide referral services to. And I'm proud to report that lower line in red shows the number of folks who, after were referred, actually contacted us back and said that they actually took advantage of services. So really speaks to our team's efforts and the effectiveness of this program in its infancy. So we will continue to operate the referral service and work with the Human Service Commission in the coming months to complete that service gap analysis we talked about earlier. And we plan on bringing that, along with the recommendations of the Human Service Commission, back to council probably in the spring or summer of this year. We are really proud to deliver this service and implement the Village Council's priority action item. Heather and I are happy to answer any questions you may have, or if you want to meet Heather after the meeting, she'll hang around as well. So that ends our manager's report tonight, Mayor. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions or comments from the council? Leslie?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make a statement that I'm thrilled to see this number even before the portal was up. It is striking but not surprising to see the spike that we saw before the holidays, and I would not be surprised to see another spike as spring approaches. I am so hoping to see more referrals and fewer deaths of despair. The pandemic has just put an immense strain on people, and it's funny because just talking the other day with fellow moms, a friend said that she was struggling with low energy, no motivation, and brain fog. And I said I felt the same thing. And someone was like, well, yeah, that's burnout. I, on a regular basis for work, discuss burnout and write case examples about it. But because I'm not in a high-stress job, I didn't even recognize it in myself. So I'm lucky to have health insurance, a therapist, but I also know that many members are not so lucky. So I just genuinely hope that these services can connect people with the resources they need, and we can continue to break down the stigmas associated with poverty, mental health crises, and trauma. Because, quite frankly, we don't get to choose the traumas we face or how much serotonin is hanging around in our brains. So I'm really proud to be a part of this council that made this happen, and I just want to thank Heather and all of the staff for making this happen and already getting these results before this portal was even launched.
Rich?
Yeah, I'm also very pleased to see this. There are so many services available, and it's just a myriad of offerings that is very confusing for people. So to have something that they can get to know easily and knows the village and someone they can trust with a single phone call or an email to cut through all of that and get them directly to the help they need. When someone's in trouble, it's really very difficult if they're forced to wade through all these bureaucracies or all these hundreds of programs. So, but be able to narrow it down, get them the help they need as quickly as possible, to avert even more serious problems. I'm just really proud of us for moving forward with this.
Thanks, Rich. Nicole?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank the Human Services Ad Hoc Committee for putting this forward, for our village staff for making this happen. Thank you to Heather for taking on this role. For municipalities, this is a fairly new position, and we knew we wanted somebody, but we didn't know exactly what they would do, how we would have them do it, and our staff and Heather really formulated this fantastic program. And I appreciate the Human Service Commission continuing to investigate this issue. Social work and the need for these services continues to rise. My own school is looking into hiring another social worker next year, and I had somebody ask me the other day, why do you think there's such a need for more social workers? Is it the pandemic? I don't know. Is it the fact that stigma is kind of going away when it comes to social work and therapy? I don't know. But what I do know is there is a need for it, and that need continues to rise. And I really am proud to see that the residents of our village will benefit from a program that we have worked so hard to create. So thank you to staff, Human Services Ad Hoc, Human Service Commission, and Heather. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Chris?
Yeah, so I just had a question and then a comment. I'm assuming that the referrals that have come in have been primarily from our police and fire, since it was not really launched or announced. Will we be getting reporting on sort of how many are understanding that this is available, or I guess maybe a better way to put it, who's calling in as opposed to who's being referred? I think that's will be a good measurement of how much this is permeating throughout the village.
Yes, we are keeping track of that, and will continue to do so and report it out to the HSC and to this village council. Yes, you're correct. Initially, with the soft launch, it's primarily coming in through our public safety departments. We did have a couple others reach out through other departments and just reaching out for help at the village. Since we made this announcement last Thursday, I believe we've already had 7 or 8 members of the public contact Heather directly. So the word is getting out there. We expect that number to grow, and yes, we will track and report them.
That's great. So I am especially pleased at the progress of the social services referral program. I think it's an amazing start to what I think is going to be an extremely valuable resource to the village for years to come. I want to recognize the previous council, many of who sit next to me tonight, for bringing back the Human Services Committee as a priority item and ultimately approving the addition of the social worker, which was critical to getting this program moving. And welcome, Heather, and thank you for all your hard work, and of course staff executing this in a way that's been efficient and clearly effective. I did have the pleasure of serving on the Ad Hoc Services Committee, and it was the work of that committee that really helped start this and bring these services to light. The members of that committee worked together to come up with a lot of great recommendation, and as I've said before, it was an extremely rewarding experience for me working with some great folks who I think should be recognized tonight. Samantha Aycock, Rebecca Campbell, Tom Connolly, Azizi Marshall, Kimberly Nagy, and Stephanie Williams. I also welcome the new committee and look forward to their work. One of the key recommendations we made from our report was this referral service, as village manager mentioned, and to see it in action is just simply amazing for me. While I wish there was zero need for this service, the fact that we had 75% referral acceptance rate really demonstrates that the need is real, and the services that we're now providing to our residents is extremely valuable. I also look forward to what's to come from the new HSC, and specifically that gap analysis to understand how we can leverage both our new social worker and this referral program to do more for those who are in need in our residents. But I'm very happy and again thankful for all involved for making it happen. Thank you.
Greg.
Thank you, Mayor. As the son of a social worker, I'm thrilled to see this taking off the way it is, that we've been able to already affect so many lives in a positive way. And I think it speaks to the need that's out there that too often is more silent than it should be. And we're finally making a difference in that, and I think it's a very positive thing. And I look forward to all the future success of the program. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Increasing access to service is the point here. And I'm like my colleagues, I'm excited about it, but I don't want to miss that because that is also going to increase. As some of my colleagues have alluded to, the need is increasing as well. And so increasing that access is only going to follow that need. It'll probably always be behind the curve, but at least we're acknowledging that there is that need and trying to find a way to use some assets to put people into connection with the help they need. one of the things I wanted to thank, there are a lot of good thank yous up here, and not to diminish anybody on the HSC or Heather's work, but I want to thank the rest of our village team, because the truth of the matter is the need is not new. This program might be new, but the need is not. And so for years, our police department, our fire department, our public works folks, people in the billing departments have come across these needs, and just like what led up to some of this initial stuff, and frankly have often gone way above and beyond what we described their job description as, to try and help people. This is a way more effective, likely efficient manner of doing so. But thank you to everybody that works for the village that has picked up the slack in the interim. I think that's important to acknowledge as well. Dave, you got anything else in your report?
That ends the manager's report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Only one item to present tonight, and that is an ordinance amending certain zoning ordinance provisions. It will be on next week's active agenda. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Enza. Last item on our agenda, council member reports. This is an opportunity of the meeting for council members to report out on goings-on in the community or other organizations they're connected with, other government entities. Tonight we'll look left and look right and start left. Danny, what's on your list?
No report, thank you, Mayor.
I was trying to trick Rich. It didn't work. You see that? He didn't fall for it.
He's got your number.
Chris, anything on your list?
Yeah, just as we've heard tonight, the Social Services Referral Program, please take advantage of it if you can. Lots of different assistance, financial, health, wellness, emergency shelter, domestic abuse, and sexual assault. All of those topics. We've got someone now that can help, and we hope that you take advantage of it. And on another note, I just want to wish the best of luck to David Edwards, who is the Downers Grove North grad, who's playing in the Super Bowl this weekend for the LA Rams. So best of luck. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Greg?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Rich?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Leslie?
Yeah, just because I can. I just want to ask the community to please act with patience and kindness with regard to COVID-19 mitigations. I know that we are a completely separate governing body, but as, a fellow elected official, we have been getting comments and conversations from community members. So I did just want to say that school districts have been put in an unenviable decision to determine the metrics that outline how much illness or death we'll tolerate. That is not an exaggeration, nor is it an attack, but it's the blunt reality of what a return to normal post-COVID means. We want our schools to understand the gravity of the decision and all of our organizations and determine a clear and solid path forward. So just please, as we're going through this process, assume good intentions of all of the staff and your elected officials. All of us in these local units of government want a healthy and thriving community. Please don't let the politics of masking fracture the community that we've built. Everyone who steps up to serve wants to do good. So please give people grace. It is all of our first pandemic, and there are no right answers. It's just people doing our best every day. I'm proud of how far we have come together, whether it's supporting our local restaurants with takeout to the development of our social services portal to help those who are struggling and have a lack of resources. We've accomplished so many good things together, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. So please don't lose sight of that and be kind, empathetic, and listen to one another. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Nicole?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
I have no report either. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all. Good night.